Welcome to another episode of People of Penang, where we get to know the people in our community. And today, we actually have Katharine and Kenny, the custodians of the Spice Gardens. And I know everybody's like, oh, it's okay. But for me, it's very important to admit this. Katharine was actually our very first podcast recording. And we were so green that I had messed up the recording of the audio. So we had all these beautiful images of us just talking. And it's just like, the mouths moving. But believe it or not, Katharine, you actually helped us set the tone of what the podcast was about, because it was very intangible at that point. And we didn't want to make the podcast into a bare all journalistic, we're going for the truth kind of situation. We wanted it to be more of understanding, but it was very in the ether at that point in time, what that actually meant. But that conversation we had with you and how natural you were, and it's such a shame that it's lost in the ether. But yeah, you helped us figure it out, how we're going to do this. No questions, just conversation. Now we have a couch instead of a table.
That hasn't changed since the first episode, and we get to say welcome again for the first time. Yeah. You are the first returnee.
Oh no! Well, not just that. She was our first episode, technically, and this would be our final episode of the season. So it's like she was the opening, and now she closes it as well. The finale.
Mo's talking about being green and all that. He's just being nice to himself and us as a team. We're noobs. We screwed up.
So this was a very interesting learning process. It has been a couple of months, and what do you guys think of the new setup?
Yeah, it's amazing. Brilliant. Really good. It's great that we can just sort of speak freely, and I'm not mic'd up. And so it's nice.
Yeah, there was just so much going on at that point, and I think I was just trying hard to do we need monitoring systems? Do we need earphones? You're a little far away from the mic, a little too close to the mic. This one is... thanks to Ying Ying from his recording studio.
The purpose of the show is to share what happens behind the scenes. So what behind the scene was, there was actually a pickup truck of audio equipment, which we just finished assembling the moment we started recording without testing. I forgot we were so optimistic. Right?
Yeah, we were so optimistic. I brought one of a huge Pelican case, like an army van worth of equipment. So thank God we don't have to do that again. But yeah, so
but people of Penang are nice. Katharine, thanks for giving us a second chance.
All right. That's all right.
And being the second couple on the podcast as well. You guys literally are the second couple. First was David and Rebecca. David Estilo and Rebecca. Which is a pleasure as well, because we've noticed that the dynamics when you have a couple together, you guys tend to feel very comfortable. Are you comfortable, Kenny? Are you okay?
I'm totally comfortable if she does all the talking.
I realize that. Is that your guys' normal dynamic where, he's...
No, he's the eye candy.
Has got to be a balance, right? If both talk too much, then they'll be at loggerheads, One talk more, the second one talks a little less, then it's okay.
The whole yin and yang and stuff.
Exactly.
So, but the thing is, how did you guys together decide to partner up and be the custodians of the Spice Garden? I know we talked about it in the first episode. That was never,
we can rewind and start with some context first. What is the Tropical Spice Garden?
Thank you, Eugene. Yes. What is the Tropical Spice Garden?
Okay, well, I guess I feel like I'm on the spot now. I have to answer.
Well, you don't have to. You could just
Yeah, that's actually a harder question to answer than you'd think. I feel like we've been through we've been through 20 years, right? We're into our 21st year now, and I think the story is ever changing and it's ever evolving. So what we started off as, and I think many people sort of, at least I kind of look at the time period as like pre-COVID. People generally thought of us as a tourism destination, somewhere we're on the tourist map, and the agents and the
taxi drivers. It's in Batu Ferringhi, right? We're
in Batu Ferringhi. Actually, it's actually more accurate to say we're in Teluk Bahang.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we lie in an 8-acre valley, which was a former rubber estate, and it was basically
also a former British R&R.
Oh, you mean like where they... Like when they came off the ship, they would go there to decompress or something.
Yeah, there was an old villa there, and that villa was used by the British Army as a rest and recreation place.
Oh,
Yeah, it
that's
used to be.
new information.
Yeah, it was a old British R&R spot.
I've noticed there's quite a few of those around, like the Penang Hill, where the habitat is used to be that as well. Actually, Eugene,
We did talk a lot about it, but we'll get to that later.
Like
Crack Villa.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, and so it was a place that it was earmarked for conservation. No trees were taken down during the development of the spice gardens, except for a few rubber trees to allow sunlight in, and it was basically to tell the story of Penang through the eyes of the spice trade, because at that time very little was known about it, and yet there was this important part of history where spices, and it's a lovely story to tell. So I think so that's really the early beginnings of the spice garden, but I think what it has become today is slightly different, maybe more a gathering space, a community space. I think we're sort of moving into that direction, and as we develop all the curation for our members and for the community, so it's evolved, and I think the story continues to evolve as to what we are and who we are.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that little bit where spice was the main reason colonialism happened, right? And there weren't a lot of places that emphasized on it. I mean, I'm not saying any of the other places were wrong, but they emphasized on, maybe those who were from a monastery establishing schools. But do you actually have a lot of the spices that categorize or characterized a lot of what colonialism was about, like the nutmegs, the various peppers and spices, the ones that caused wars?
Yeah.
Do you actually have them?
Yeah.
Definitely. And Penang as a whole was used for planting spices, right? Because of the British.
Yep.
So they brought nutmeg, they brought clove, they brought pepper over, and so they were established in different localities in Penang, mainly Balik Pulau. And then there are places even named after spices, like Pepper Estate in Tanjung Tokong. Yeah. So basically, there's a very long-standing history.
Yeah. So the first botanic gardens, the botanic gardens we know today is actually the third, if I'm not mistaken. And there was an earlier 2 botanic gardens that were around Aitam site, and it was called the Penang Spice. No, what was it called? I can't remember. But it was actually known as a spice garden, and it was used as a repository by the British East India Company, who had gone out to Indonesia and had collected spice specimens back, and they wanted to kind of develop and nurture these to send out to all their colonies. And so Penang became a place, to bring in all these spice specimens.
The botanical gardens at Aitam back then was actually very important for the East India Companies. Yeah. They founded it as like a laboratory to test all the things. They brought in nutmeg, they brought in pepper, they brought in all kinds of things to see which one was profitable and could grow.
So
it was very important.
Actually know what would work. They just brought it and put it in the ground. Is that it was trial and error, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, but
pretty much.
Yeah, but I guess they must have figured out that the climate's quite similar to the Banda Islands, which were where the nutmeg and clove
Moluccas.
generally were coming from, the Moluccas. Yeah.
Wow.
So the early days, Penang was growing cinnamon and all that, and that was all because of Francis Light's kawan, right? Like they all had all the Scots, and
they were actually by then very global. We even have produce, from the Caribbean, and also very far distant places by then.
Oh wow!
The East India Company already had a century of working on those stuff by then.
Yeah.
So they experimented a lot of stuff.
Well, could it be said that the whole
and our regular siput babi we see here? They're not native.
Siput babi.
They're actually African giant snails.
Oh wow!
They were brought by the British all over the world.
Oh, they weren't native.
Yes, this is one of those invasive species through trade.
Why? What's the purpose of themselves?
They hung on to ships. I reproduce. They're tough guys.
Oh wow!
They're great sailors.
Oh, they're colonialists.
So that's why you go everywhere. You see this. Our siput babi here. They're all around the world. It's due to all the trade routes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we also don't have the famous the the rat, the Raptorus ratus, is actually taken all around the world, invasive species.
Oh my God. So that's just a pure representation of human beings traveling around and, colonizing things. That's
Animals hitching a ride.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think so. I mean, if we were to delve further into that whole spice history, it's such an amazing and a fascinating history, really. Even just in our little region, the Moluccas, Penang, and just that little isolated bit is so fascinating. We know the wars and everything that broke out because of that, and how it changed history. And I think at that time, we're looking 21 years ago, or maybe even more. Penang's tourism was, people thought of Penang Hill, the vernacular train, Kek Lok Si, and I think at that time, Dave and Rebecca's sort of vision was like, we need to bring something different to Penang, and we need to tell a different story. We need to give a different perspective on the formation of Penang. And I think it was a brilliant idea to base it around spices, because there's a real romanticism around that story, right?
So we like a good origin story in our episodes. So who can you give a little bit of background? Who is Dave and Rebecca you're talking about?
Yeah.
Which coincidentally, our previous couple was the same pair, so Dave and Rebecca too.
Yeah. So we thought we'd interviewed them, but yeah. So they are,
Wilkinson, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So they could hold a whole podcast by themselves. They've done
we might get them on.
Yeah, they've done amazing things as well in their journey. But but the Spice Garden story would have started with them because they used to live there. So in the outpost, which Kenny's talking about, that sort of 1930s, 40s structures, they converted it into their home. And what we use as our cooking school today was their bedroom, which they built. And so they had just come fresh off from Pangkor, which they've got their Tiger Rock
it's like a bed and breakfast
artist retreat.
Artist retreat, like we're talking about artists like painting, sculpting.
Because
Rebecca's a painter,
an artist.
Rebecca.
Oh my, okay.
She's an artist, right? So that's her main thing. So so she had just come living out of Pangkor, but I guess their kids were growing up. They needed a place to school them, so they moved to Penang. And being the people they are, they're not going to go into an average, semi-D taman. So they looked for an interesting space, and they found an opportunity to rent and live at the Spice Garden. And it was from there they saw the potential in the land. Where they lived was up there, but there was a whole valley of land, and so the company that David was working for at that time, Bertam Consolidated Rubber, he was an MD with them, and so he basically got them to invest into this kind of community project, a give back project to Penang, and that's how it went. So they were our previous bosses.
Is Bertam Rubber still the owner of the land?
No, so we went through a management buyout together with David in 2010 roundabout, and so then that's when Bertam stepped down and we took over as the business owners. Yeah.
How does one actually start it? There must be basically there's no manual on this. How does one begin to design it? You got a landscape designer, right? In Chong, is it?
Yeah.
How did it begin? The whole project to get it up? Maybe some insights.
Yeah, I don't know what the connection was, but they managed to secure Inch
I think they're just
as the
good
designer.
friends. David and Rebecca are good friends,
Probably. And that was Inch's pilot project before he became world famous, right? So he designed the garden, and the rest was history, so they say.
What's his full name?
Lim In Chong.
Lim In Chong is an award-winning landscape.
Yeah, he won.
Architect.
He won the. I didn't realize there was also a World Cup in landscaping design.
There's a World Cup in landscaping.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
The finals.
Yeah,
they are doing all the gardening.
I was blown away as well. So he won 3 times. He won the World Cup.
He won 7 times.
7
actually.
times?
Wow.
7
sorry.
times, Gold medal.
Okay, now we learn something new. There's a landscaping World Cup.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is there like a barren piece of land,
No, it was a rubber plantation, as you said, right?
Oh, they just
No. The World Cup is held at different places around the world. I don't know whether they have it yearly or like the World Cup every 4 years, but they have different localities, and wherever the venue is, you're given a small space, and then you just create magic from with that small space.
And you fly in all your plants and everything,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So Kenneth,
Yeah.
were you at the beginning? You were in charge of what? The horticulture part. What's your background?
No. I actually came in slightly later, after the garden was already established.
A whole 1 year later, not very much later.
What was your role back then?
I was the curator.
Oh, curator.
Yeah, so I took care of basically the landscape, the hardscape and the softscape. Yeah, so all the plants.
So you procured all the different species. Yeah.
well,
Is that what-
Basically, most of the things were already put on ground and fully grown by the time I got there.
Oh, so it was done.
So I arrived in 2005. I think the project started in year 2000, and then the garden was open to public by the end of 2003.
2003.
And then I came 2005. Yeah, and then I was the curator then until now.
Katharine, when did you get involved? At the beginning?
Yeah, so basically at the end of 2003.
Okay.
So basically David and Rebecca had assembled their team, got Inch in, Freddie came on board as a project manager, and they basically took about 1.5 years to put the gardens together. And I came at the tail end of that. And then off we went. And then basically Freddie left to pursue his landscaping business, and so I got kind of thrown into the deep end of managing this garden as a very fresh grad in a way, with kind of no business sense, no business anything. I still don't have any business sense, I think. So some
Technically,
things
you were
don't
Kenny's
change,
boss. Is that
Well, yes and no, but
Well,
then,
there's nothing
but
wrong
then
with
we
that. Emily's my
I
boss.
didn't say anything wrong. We just want to clarify.
My wife's my boss.
Yeah, I suppose technically do well, yeah. And then we got married the year after, 2006.
Oh, you weren't even a... Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, but I think we were dating by then. And then obviously there was a huge gap when Freddie and the team left. There was no one to look after the gardens, and so Kenny just felt was the perfect fit because of his past and his experience with working with plants.
And now they have two beautiful kids who are actually looking at us as we record.
A shout out.
But here's the question that you mentioned. You managed the hardscape and softscape. I was trying to wrap my head on what that meant, because for me it's all plants and land. So how is it hard and soft? What's the difference? This is me being a noob, not having any landscaping experience. The difference between
Usually when you're talking about softscape, you're referring to the plants.
So that's soft.
Yeah, and hardscape, you're talking about like the structures that's within
Like the house, the gazebo, the
exactly
Stonehenge,
or whatever that you build, or whatever solid structure that you place within the landscape. So I mean, I kind of lumped hardscape into things like plumbing, brickwork, woodwork, etc. Also, yeah.
So you're not just someone who can plant the seedlings of things. You build actual structures, like.
Yeah, not me per se, but I'm so fortunate to have a really good team.
Yeah.
So we had to build the team from basically scratch. But along the way, we're really lucky to have found skilled workers. So they can do brickwork, they can do woodwork. So we do everything in-house. All the structures that we build within the garden, we all build in-house. So that saves a lot of time and money and heartache as well, So sometimes when you're dealing with contractors, it's a lot more difficult in terms of time, in terms of the things that you want done. So yeah, we've kind of ironed that out by having a in-house team.
Because I kind of figured that you guys are not cookie cutter in any sense of the word. It's not like just build me a house and it looks like your standard modern house. It's because the last time I was there, the layout of everything is quite unique. I mean, it was also quite an exercise, but it's quite unique in a sense where it's very novel.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
out of the box.
peculiar.
Yeah, it's peculiar. Well, I know. I didn't want to say weird or peculiar, but I mean, not that you said yes. It's out of the ordinary for sure. So, was there a certain degree of having to train your team, because it doesn't seem like they teach that in university here. That's how unique it is.
You can tell, tender loving care has been applied to a lot of this stuff.
But tender loving care, but it's like the difference between a house and building a giant mech robot. You know what I mean?
I think it comes down to just the peculiarity of the land. It's so individual. It's so unique. It's so asymmetrical. There's nothing symmetrical or easy about it. You're building on slopes, you're building on with different kinds of trees around you, you're building with boulders, it's just such the land is as it is, and you just have to work around it, is how I see it, right? I mean,
it's also our philosophy. We don't want to fight Mother Nature, we want to try and
embrace it.
Embrace it and try to work around it or work with it.
When it comes to the landscape, because the Tropical Spice Garden is unique, was it story driven? Like you wanted to tell a specific story, or everything was built first and then the story came? I mean, what was the thought process between you two when it came to its modern current layout?
The basic layout, basic design, that was all done by Inch, and then later on as the place kind of evolved, and we thought, we need to add this structure here, we need to add another structure there. So we just work around it, and it's really challenging because of the contour of the land. There's a lot of slopes, and then as you are kind of building on the slope, suddenly you find this massive boulder. Also, another really excellent example is when we were building our second gift shop. So the original gift shop that we had, it became too cramped of a space. So then we decided to let's build another gift shop. Let's look for kind of a relatively large flat space. So then we found this area where there's a huge fig tree that's right in the middle of the land. So we can't do anything, right? We have to build around the tree. So my team and I, we built a circular structure, and like the pinnacle of the roof, we've kind of enveloped it around the huge big tree. But then over time, we found, this is like right at the top of the hill. So we found, for people to go to the gift shop, they have to walk really far up the hill just to buy something, right? I mean, sometimes you get people just want to pop in and buy stuff and don't want to walk the garden.
Yeah.
You have cases like that. But they have to walk up the hill, and there were a lot of grouses saying, we have to walk so far. So then we kind of changed the idea and say, then let's build another gift shop and have it just by the side of the entrance. So now that gift shop space that we built around the fig tree has turned into our office. So we've got our office staff sat around this huge big tree right in the middle.
What in the...
and it's quite it's a talking point. So when I've got guests on the shop, they're like, there's a tree in your office, and they're like taking photos, and my staff are like, it's so normal to us, but it's just so it's definitely story and need driven. It's like, so as things progress, we're like, we need like a meeting space. Okay, build pavilion. It needs to get bigger. Okay, expand it. So it's sort of like that.
Your trees are wonderful gathering places. You embrace it, because recently, there's another at the Tree Square in Tanjung, right? It's just wonderful to build around
the big rain trees. Yeah,
it's just like now a natural gathering place with all the shade. So it's very good. philosophy in architecture.
Is there a different vibe when you have a tree growing out of your office?
It's alive. It's alive.
That's what I meant. Like, is there?
It has personality.
So
It changes through the season.
occasionally you'll get one squirrel coming down a tree.
Snakes.
Sometimes there's a snake that's perched on the branch.
No, but all sorts of things that we have things
the
dropping
tree is
from
big
the roof.
enough. It's a mini ecosystem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And that tree is a favorite for the turtle dove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think also people, with all right now we are experiencing a lot of heat at this moment in Penang. It's actually wonderful that, people underestimate the amount of shade that a giant tree can give. It is significantly cooler
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
when there's just some
Absolutely.
shade there.
Yeah, like over the first lockdown, right? COVID hit, first lockdown, everyone was, the very first one was the worst. You can't even come out of your house.
Oh
right?
my God, I forgot that existed.
So luckily, we had some staff at the garden. So the gardeners built a huge deck. It's like a 50 plus 60 foot length by 30 to 40 foot width wooden platform that's elevated. So they still had work to do, and they built it over that 3-month period. Yeah, and also around trees. So you have this flat deck, wooden deck, and suddenly you got 1, 2, 3 big trees perched up right in the middle, and that created the natural canopy for the wooden platform.
Yeah, I kind of figured in life you do need that kind of counterbalance. I'm more of a dreamer. I don't want to say visionary because that's like, ooh, most of the visionary. No, I mean, like,
the team chemistry is important. We are a team. They are a team.
Yes.
Teams can get things done. Wonderful.
100%.
things.
Yeah. But do you guys have that sort of chemistry within yourselves as well? Because your profession and career and business, it's, in my opinion, is so out of the box. It doesn't feel like there's any manual or like, oh, here's a YouTube guide, 10 steps to start your own tropical spice guide. There's none of that. And I'm sure there was a lot of times where there is more uncertainty than anything else. Like, was this dichotomy between you two a strength that helped you power through, especially through COVID and all the
You
problems?
were close for 18 months, right?
Yeah, felt like it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess it's about playing to our strengths. I mean, we're both very different, and we both are skilled differently as well. So I think we've just learned to play to that, which is great because then you cover all grounds, right? And you can cover more that way. And yet there's a synergizing, I think, with the top level kind of ideas or the general philosophy about how the gardens should be, how it can be run, etc. So I think it works. I think there is a good synergy. I think. What would you say?
Hi, Kenny. What would you say?
Yeah.
I think the main thing, the most important thing is we are both aligned in what our drive is. I think both of us, in that sense, we are very similar. We're not money driven. Of course, we have to kind of make enough to keep operation costs, keep the place running, right? But the main thing is we are both not money driven. It's not just we're not doing this business to get money. We won't get rich out of this business, that's for sure. So I think with that in mind, with that alignment, she does the sales and the marketing and the business and the admin part, whereas I am more involved on site on the land. So she does her part really well and I do my part. And when we have things to discuss, to work together, then we come together. Yeah, but basically that's our philosophy. We are not totally money driven. and both of us really agree on we have to basically build community, and that's our love.
And that's our love too.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
like he literally phrased it word for word.
Wonderfully.
How we, because see the thing is that's very rare. We when we started Penang Hidden Gems, it was the same thing. We didn't have money in mind, and we had a lot of people who had very good intentions tell us like, hey, yeah, how to run a business like that, you know. And it wasn't like people we didn't know. It was the closest people to us, you know. It's like, you have to find a way to feed your children and da, da, da. And it was very hard. And I know for a fact that because it angered me a lot, you know. I'm a very passionate, emotional type of person. Have you ever had that moment where you felt like nobody understands and you're the only person, or you two are the only people that can see it so clearly? Because this happened to me and Emily many times, where we're just so determined with this vision, but nobody else would believe us. Have you ever been stuck in that? And how did you power through? How did you go do it anyways?
Yeah, I mean, I think the longer we stay in this, I think along the way, especially in the early days for me anyway, I try to become, you know, you go for all these management courses and you learn how to do
more
this.
business savvy.
Yeah,
And it failed miserably.
I know that's like, oh God,
And
yeah.
then you go for all these trainings to improve your weaknesses, right? Like, okay, so my numbers are no good. So you go and you learn about how to number crunch and do reports better and all that. And I
So
did
you
all
see
that, right? But
I mean, the mainstream is that, you know, in business is that your customers are basically your profits. They're not your community, which is a different thing altogether. Like you coined the term like social entrepreneurship, right?
That's not a thing. Like, really? I
mean, you call yourself that. So that's a good
that
way.
seems like the business of making communities. I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So you know, but I think so. Along the way, I feel like in the early days, I was trying to, what's the word? Trying to improve my weakness. Where I fall short, we work on that. But I think I'm at that stage now. It's like you play to your strengths, and I think that's what I found myself doing more in the last few years. It's like, you know what, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm better at, I'm just going to do that, I'm going to hire my weakness, or I'm going to leave that to someone else because I can't do it. And I think it's a waste of time. You know, I only have so many more years left, you know, to rather than trying to work on something I'm not good at, just play to my strength and just work with that. And I think you bring an authenticity to the business when you do that. This is, you know, the Gardens is the way it is because of the leadership, because of what energy you bring and how you build the team around you, right? So I think I'm kind of at peace with that right now. Like I say, I don't think I'm a very good business person. I'm probably don't tick many boxes in the business world, but you just do what you can, right? And that's what makes it individual and unique.
It's a different way of looking at it. You know, sometimes businesses, you know, they grow really fast and profitable, but they're not sustainable. And we talked to like a previous guest about his coffee shop business. He don't see it as a coffee shop; he see it as a social enterprise, and it helped him, you know, through COVID, because you had a community
And the trauma that he went through, just his life in general. He's quite a soldier in that respect.
Yeah.
You say your community also helped you through those hard times?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I mean, I think if it wasn't for them coming through, we would have sunk the whole business. You know.
Oh right, I remember the conversation we had. Your community kept you afloat through COVID. You had it's not a charity drive, but it was more of a
It was a crowdfunding.
Oh, it was a crowdfunding. Yes, that's a proper term. Yeah.
So that was you know, I was me looking at my teammate John, and we're like, okay, John, we need to do something because we've actually come to the end of our bank account.
Yeah.
We can go no further. I remember it very clearly. It was July 2021, and we had come to the end of our bank account.
My God.
And then I'm like, you know, let's just put out a little appeal video. We didn't in our mind, it wasn't even a crowdfunding. It was just, let's put out a little video, tell a story, and let's try to raise some membership, you know, just to tell people. And that's what we did. So literally with his iPhone balancing on a rock at the bamboo garden, he took a video of me just kind of putting out an appeal telling a very quick story of the Spice Garden, and like we are coming to the end of that. But here's a little membership subscription that you can subscribe to for 25 ringgit a month. And literally when that video went out, like within an hour, we just saw the floodgates open.
Oh, wow.
Just people were giving from all over, from Penang, throughout Malaysia, through outside of Malaysia.
People of Penang, you are wonderful. That's the reason Spice Garden is still around.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was such a turning point for me to realize that we really are carried by the weight of the community. And then at every opportunity, I found myself, with the team saying, let's do this for our Spice fam. Let's open the gates for free for our community. And I think that energy has not left us yet, because I still continue to be very grateful because, and I think it was a real teaching, it was a learning point for me as well. Throughout COVID, we were so reliant on international tourists. And we became we're very unresilient. Tourism is very unresilient, right? Because, something like that happened, or you have SARS and MERS from previous years, you have a crisis, you have a bomb attack. The first thing to go is tourism. So we realized if we're going to build resilience, you need to start with your neighbors. You need to start with something around you that will continue to sustain you through the hard times. And I think that was really driven home for me. And so until today, we continue to want to do things for the community. So we do things like open the gardens for free, which we've never, and I would have never considered those things before COVID, So it was very humbling but in such a good way, I think, for us, yeah.
I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And, because recently, so I don't do MCing per se as what people think. I only do it for friends. Like if you have a business, you have an event, for me to help. So recently a friend of mine, and he is what you would call, in my book, for the longest time I've known him, a proper businessman, like smart, he puts all his ducks in order, and he had a really good event company for the longest time. And recently I was doing an event for him, and I noticed that a lot of the original team had left, leaving only the upper management and what could be described as just a skeleton team of just new people. The quality between before and now was very apparent. Like they still tried, and in fact, the last event was 2 days ago, and they messed it up in the glorious fashion. I will not get into details, but you know who you are. When I came back home, I literally had to talk to Emily about it, and I was like, I just realized something, This guy I knew, he's really brilliant and he's smart, but it's not him that made his success. It was the people under him, the ones who slogged at the audio, that as crazy of an idea that he had, they materialized it and executed it, right? I think that's something that people need to realize, because there are a lot more bosses. And okay, I'm gonna have to. I'm not mentioning you by name, but you're a boss, so stop it. He's that type of person, where he's not a leader. He's a boss. He will yell at you and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff. It's the one aspect of our friendship that I don't like. But I think people need to realize that that's not how society was. It was only because of this modern idea, this hierarchy, and almost borderline slave ownership that we've kind of fall into as the zeitgeist of our era, that why things are so horrible. People are going through mental health, when in fact this community idea is what we should be thriving in, that those who are talented should be treated and addressed and given credit instead of somebody higher up. But what do you think about that? For me, that was my current learning experience now, because I was just like, man, he's not as good as he was because he wasn't kind to the people he worked with.
Yeah. Golly, it's all a journey, I feel, and I've learned to, we cannot judge lah, it's very difficult.
Oh no, I'm judging him for sure, because for me, it's like, I've known this guy for ages, and I'm like, I know exactly the demon you are, hence why I'm looking at the camera, I'm like, stop it,
Oh, okay, yeah, but
I hope he's watching though,
Yeah, I don't know, I just feel, we're all parents, we're all sons and daughters, we're all, we all know these categories that we live, we all wear many hats, and I just feel like, just even becoming a mum, and I see all the mums that come to work. I know all their struggles, with timing, sick children, and whatever it is. It's just the multitude of things, right? I'm like, how can you not have compassion? And I always feel like, why? I feel guilty when I feel I have extra privileges as the business owner, right? My time's not flexible. I can do things, way beyond what my staff can do, which are clocking in from 9 to 5. And so it's like, my goodness, you invest so much time at the gardens, more than 3/4 of your life is spent at work. And if it can't be pleasant and there's no quality of life, I mean, I think it's like slave driving. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I'm very conscious of that. So if I know a staff has to go because their child's got, awards day or whatever, I feel the level of compassion I have now is far greater, because I understand they've got to be there for their kids, right? That's important. And their kids is sick or they've got all these things. I want to try to be as giving in that way as possible, because it's like, God, there's only one life to live, and it's all sucked up 75% of the time at work, and you're miserable. It's just, for me, it doesn't make any sense. We want to be a sustainable business, but the journey has to be sustainable. It can't just be this false story of we're a sustainable garden, but all my staff are suffering. They are miserable. They're not enjoying the journey. For me, it's completely
Speaking of staff, how many people does it take to run such an operation?
Oh, far less now. Yeah. So I guess, so COVID taught us to run a tighter ship.
Yeah, of course.
So I think now we're about 20 strong.
Oh.
If you think about it, all in it's about just under 20.
Yeah.
Whereas before we were more 30 plus, 40. Yeah.
Well,
So as I say, we like to share what happens in the background of businesses and activities. So what kind of work do you do to make it, continue ticking?
Oh.
Now there's a brief overview of a typical day to make sure the thing doesn't collapse.
Oh, yeah.
Now I think more of the staff, they multitask. In general. So that's why, we had no choice. During the lockdown, we had to, like so many other businesses, we have to keep our operation costs way down, right? And then you have to lose some workers. That's not by choice. In order to let the business survive, we had to do that. So we lost, I think, 2/3 of our staff, and then everyone went down to the lowest basic, because not working, and we're not even getting any salary. For our staff, in order to keep them on. Fortunately, they understand also. They were willing to take the cut, and then it was down to the barest minimum, and everyone just survived on that. So when things started to open back up a little bit, so we until it kind of came back to normality, we keep raising the salary, because we know how difficult it is, cost of living and etc. So right now everyone is kind of the staff, they are more or less back to the normal salary, but. So the learning journey was, during that time, actually we can cope by not having so many staff. And then because of not having so many staff, they have to work slightly more, but then their take home is more. So it's justified, right? And because of that learning, we tend to be a lot more flexible with our staff nowadays. If they need to take a family emergency, by all means go ahead. Like there's an old uncle that we found. He is such a gem. We appreciate him so much, and everything that he touches lives.
Wow.
So he is like our master propagator. So we
Green fingers.
absolutely. So anything that he touches, they live. So he's an older guy, and then he He always has issues. He has got medical issues. He's got sometimes, oh, my daughter is getting married. Oh, my daughter is starting a kindy. Another daughter starting a kindy. She needs someone to go and do some woodwork for her. Yeah, just go ahead. As long as you're running kind of a tight ship, things are in order. Plants are not dying. By all means, go ahead. I don't run them like clockwork factory.
Like a slave driver.
Exactly.
Type.
You clock in. You need to stay. Every single moment, and then you clock out. Then you got to leave. No.
See, that's the funny thing. Because I had this conversation with a UNESCO rep. I can't remember what his position is. He told me a very interesting story. Because I told him that my family background, we came from pirates. We were Landuns, right? And he's actually like, which document did you happen to get that information? I was like, what do you mean? He said, was it English or was it any other language? Because in English, they would have obviously called you pirates, the Bugis especially. But there was a very specific reason for that, because the Bugis were big competitors to the East India. They were the distributors of spice at that point before the foreign powers came in, the Dutch, the Portuguese, so on and so forth. And they were the reason why, because nobody wanted to trade with these foreigners, the Dutch and the Portuguese, because they would be like, you have nutmeg, here's money, give me nutmeg. And then the relationship ended there. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the zeitgeist of the Bugis and the other traders at the time was, you and I have to have a friendship
you
first.
Develop a relationship.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe you have a son or daughter who's having a wedding, and for some reason you need nutmeg. I happen to be sailing past this island. I will get nutmeg for you. That was the trade. And he also then said, then I told him, is that the same with the industrialization? Because India had their industrial revolution in the 17th century, deindustrialization, 18th century, the British Empire had theirs, they took credit for it. And he says, it's something like that. So his words were, the British Empire cut and pasted the Industrial Revolution, but they left out the artisanal aspect of it.
I got something to share about the Lanun part. That's not accurate though. Actually, the Malays didn't have a particular word for pirates. After all, Lanun is actually not a profession, but it's the Zulus. Ilanun, that's what they call themselves.
Oh, snap.
So what you think as privateering, pirates, back then the British, the Europeans, everybody did that. It's just standard stuff. They don't have really a name for that thing. But specifically the Malay word for Lanun comes from Ilanun, which is what the Zulus call themselves.
Oh, snap.
The same guys who want to now take Sabah.
Actually, yeah, you're more of a historian than I am. I mean, what do you think? I mean, for me, it's the most romantic idea to have that once upon a time, our society was built on community, trust, and friendship. I love that. I love that idea. And
it's a little bit too romantic. It's a pretty violent.
Do you think? I don't know. I think it's beautiful. For me, if it's true.
But maybe we can talk about spices here. The reason I recently, did read some books about it. The Europeans were a miserable bunch without spices. So due to a bad harvest for decades, so they call it wintering. They didn't have enough supplies. You got to preserve the foods and all that. I mean, salt alone is pretty boring. If you preserve the meat with a little bit of nutmeg and pepper, you're never going back. You're gonna get addicted.
No, I get what you mean.
And it's worth, risking, sailing a whole year to the other side of the world.
Yeah, apparently so.
So they were wondering where the Arabs got all those spices and all that. And of course the Portuguese, still Gagama and all that, say, I'm going to find out where the supplier is. And of course he did find out where the supplier is. And that's the beginning of the European colonization of the world. It's all down to, we hate bland food. And then the British, obviously, is related to Penang. They got addicted to tea. So it's a long journey if you don't have a pit stop. And the other place they had was Bencoolen on Sumatra. That's really out of the way. So Penang is really like a pit stop for their trade, opium and all that. Interestingly, they themselves don't take much opium, but it's more of a currency. So Penang was really a pit stop.
Right, they were trading opium for tea, right? Because China was closed off.
Yeah.
That's horrible though. They were like basically Pablo Escobar of the ocean. Back in the day.
Yeah, drug pushers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like
Yeah.
what they were selling heroin.
They were addicted to the caffeine in the tea and later on coffee.
I've always found that hard to believe because like
The Dutch were more obsessed with the coffee.
well, yeah, that I read as well. But just in general, coffee and tea, because for us it's such a common thing. I literally had a cup of coffee before coming here, so normal. But the idea that it's an abused drug, that is a drug, in general, it's mind-boggling because I don't think anybody really sees it as a drug. But when you realize the influence it had on the global narrative,
These two drinks, was at almost every turn of the European colonization of the world. I mean, even America itself, the Tea Party, they got upset with the East India Company and dumped the things into the Boston Harbor.
because they need their tea.
No, we don't want to pay taxes for the tea.
Yeah, but it was also another Penangite, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wu Lian Te, who really rose up against the whole opium trading and all that as well, right? He tried to shut it all down.
It's funny how world history is connected, and this is where I actually like Eugene's perspective on things. That
That's
nothing
not my
is in a
perspective of things.
Okay,
I
sorry.
tried to study what could be known about the past.
or at least what you hadn't told me, so it feels like your perspective, Eugene. That that you can't look at anything in a bubble. Like for example, when we were discussing, he was saying about Fort Cornwallis, or Cornwallis in general. People don't know that he's the guy that George Washington defeated during the American Revolutionary War. He was. I'm gonna paraphrase. This is not Eugene's words. He's basically the loser that came here. And, he lost a war. He lost. So for me, it's funny because you don't see that connection, but also at the same time,
I think the spices part I wanted to say was, it's when we look back, the issue we do is called presentism, where we judge and say that it's colonialism. And
I was actually getting to that. Yeah,
they just didn't want bland food. That's basically it. And they're addicted to a drink. It's all commerce. When it later on morphed into, empire building. But the very first few guys who came here, like James Lancaster, they were just a bunch of privateers looking for...
Wait, are you saying that they were no different than me at 3 a.m. in the morning wanting to go to a 7-Eleven because there's no food in my fridge? It's like, I mean, there's food, but it's like bland.
I wrote this article about, mee goreng, because it represents, the globalization of the world. Because think about it, chilies don't come from here. They come from South America.
Yeah.
So imagine a world with no potatoes, no chilies, no cocoa. It's a very different world before this.
That's literally everything.
Yeah.
And
we take
the list
for granted.
goes on.
Yeah.
Tea, coffee, vanilla.
So I think your spice garden represents that that turning point in humanity. I mean, we can't go back anymore. It has happened, but that globalization was basically a basic need, which is like tasty food.
But in your gardens, do you notice like a characteristic between these? Because these sound like foreign plants in one place.
I do a challenge. Do a challenge. Let's try to cook a piece of meat with no pepper, with no other spices.
You don't even have to say it, Eugene. I know exactly what it tastes like.
Spices are
you make it sound like it's alien. I know what you mean. It's so bland.
To paraphrase, Nietzsche said that life without music is not worth living. I think you can also say life without spices is not worth living.
Not worth eating.
Yes, worth eating.
Yeah.
Actually, you having said that, as we know this Brazilian family, and one time they invited us over for dinner, and they prepared steak for us, beef, cut up. But what they did was very, very simple. They just marinated the steak in salt, and then they cooked it, and then they served us. It was actually quite nice.
Yep.
Salt, just salt and steak.
Just salt. Yeah, just salt. No pepper, no other spices. I remember Marcelo and Lala.
Yeah.
Salt was the currency back then. That's where the saying "worth your salt" comes from.
Salary came from the word salt.
Many things.
Yeah, it's
Salary
actually quite nice also.
Yeah, but even as you're speaking about all these different narratives that have formed our histories and our perception of it, and I feel like I'm kind of going through that in my head even now for the gardens. Like, how do we bring forth a new story for the gardens? And there's so many. I don't know. I don't want to use the word competing stories, but there's so many different angles to bring alive, and I think I'm at I'm sort of at a crossroads at the moment, just thinking about it. I think in the early days, it was more by the book, like, oh, so we're a garden, so we need to talk about the plants. We need to talk about, the normal things. How do they grow? What are they good for? What's its medicinal benefits? And, so that came through our signage. It came through our guided tours. And I was just telling someone recently that we've gone through so many different generations of signs. Some are plastic, some are with photographs, some are not, some are metal etching. We're just trying to find ways for the signage to cope in our heat, in our outdoor environment. And
then
so
it evolved to audio.
Then we've got audio.
Really expensive audios.
Yeah, but all the time, in a way, the storytelling's been quite the same, and I feel like I'm at that place now where we're actually transforming the gardens. We're not, because the reality is we're a small team. We don't have a horticulturist on board. We don't have a herbarium. We don't have, all these things which a typical botanical garden has. And although we want to be educational, I feel even that idea of what education is, I'm moving away from that kind of scientific right brain, information-led education to more experiential. So now I'm even at that crossroads where instead of just creating these boring interpretation signs, it's like, how many people really want to know how high does a hibiscus plant grow to, and what's its petal count or whatever. But I feel maybe our strength, and maybe what it's really about, this whole idea of biophilia, the idea of entering into the forest and letting the connection, your body, soul, spirit connection, resonate in nature. And that's a very much more experiential. It's almost a spiritual experience.
Forest bathing, right? Yeah.
Correct. So forest bathing. So the forest bathing is something we've just recently developed. And even as we've developed this, I'm realizing, oh my goodness, I want new signs. I want signs that trigger something when people read it. They are triggered to do something with their five senses, to experience the forest, not just read a sign about how big a plant grows. So I feel like I'm again looking for new interpretation, and it's quite exciting to think that we need to do something different. I'm constantly energized and motivated by the new things we can do, and kind of just doing things differently, and I like that freedom that we have to be able to do that. So but anyway.
Also, to add to that, if you have a collection of like 100 or 200 or maybe even up to 500 plants in the garden, and then you're going through, you have to read like 500 signs in the garden. How mind taxing is that? Yeah, so I think most of the time people walk through the garden, tourists or even the local community. Do you think people will read 100 signs as they go through the garden?
I was in the tech industry.
Eugene.
I was in the tech industry. And we came up with a term in the 80s, but now the kids use it. My son said me TLDR.
Oh yeah, I noticed.
Yeah,
that's a lexicon.
It means too long, didn't read.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing now. Yeah.
So
speaking about the
but it comes to the principle of good presentation is always the principle of show not tell.
Yeah.
Because we tell this tall and all that. Like you said, you have to read hundreds of signs. Yeah. People are not there to go and read hundreds of signs. They want
they're for experiencing something, transcendence even.
Yeah, and I feel like, but it's such a common way to do interpretation throughout many gardens in the world. And I think the more interesting ones, so I asked myself the question, when someone leaves the garden, what do I want them to leave with? What experience do I want them to take back with them? Do I want them to know in their right brain that they've learned something about a plant? Or do I want them to have left with a deeper experience with being in nature? And I said this recently, where I want them to leave with all our busy, frenetic urban lives, I want them to come away feeling that they've felt like something of a homecoming when they've stepped into the forest. I think that for me would be way more powerful than them learning about a plant. Do you know what I mean? So now I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this now, interpret this, help the visitor and the visitor experience so that they walk away with that? And I think I'm like, okay, I've got to rethink the whole thing again. So
I think
to share
with you the experience when I think it was me 10 years ago, I think I went with some people. You know what they remember about the Spice Garden wasn't the particular facts. It's this guy who was telling all kinds of stories. So you see, humans remember the story part when they have interaction. A lot of museums in the world, not to say I'm old-fashioned, I think that gimmicky things, like augmented reality, all this stuff, and multimedia, right? The ultimate multimedia is a good guide. A person,
a good
story. Humans understanding through story. In fact, more and more tech. You go to some high-tech museums, it's like you don't know what you don't remember a thing. It's like it's just like eye candy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Information poor.
It's funny that you guys mentioned because I've only thought about it now. You're right. When you have too much information, I don't remember.
To be specific,
but I remember parking the parking lot.
Remembered, from the guide, very important topics only.
Yeah.
Aphrodisiac properties of plants.
Oh, right, yeah. Aphrodisiac. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that was in my response to when you asked me, how do we keep the gardens going? And, it's like, and you asked something else that triggered that thought. So it's just, so I feel like there's always something new. It's never ending at the gardens, and that's what, that was the evolution of,
the human interaction is important.
Yeah, so.
I think people are realizing it now post-COVID because I really do see a significant difference when we all came back into the world. Then we had, because for me, I'll admit it to everybody. Like during COVID, during lockdown, I went crazy. Like lost my mind crazy, locked in the room, my office crazy, right? But it was only because you realize how fictitious everything is. You held on to some belief that the world is solid and, the structure that we have built is permanent. But what I love and hated as well was the older generation kept on calling the new generation snowflakes, but I didn't see them as snowflakes. I saw them as like, maybe this is what we were meant to be in this generation because they went through this pandemic. They came out and they're like, why? Why should I work for a company that I don't love and not respected? Why should I have to accept this salary? Why should I have to accept so for me, I look at it as that is maybe humanity coming back to its default settings. And because this is a personal journey for me as well, and I'm sure you're going through it as well. Even today, I'm going through the personal journey trying to question this, but do you think that's an accurate depiction of the newer generation and where things are after the new normal, that we're just gaining back our humanity, and part of it is reconnecting with nature, and that's why there's a lot of mental health issues because we're not connected to nature anymore. We're not part of the hive mind.
It's very, very difficult, but yes, I think that was a real kind of like, profound moment as well during COVID to realize that, what we have to offer at the gardens is so precious. It's so healing. We've got this space that is so critical at this era, at this generation, especially that we've just gone through a lockdown. We've been so pulled away from our natural state of being. We're all locked down in our cubicle houses, and no access to nature, no access to the ground. And I think, yes, it was a terrible thing for mental health issues and a multitude, even just physical health issues, So I think as we were beginning to open, I was like, yes, we've been blessed, right, to be looking after this space. We need to open this space up. We need to have this space available to more people, more. It shouldn't just be for the privileged tourists to come and then go, but it needs to be, like I said, a gathering space where families can come, everyone. It's a place for everyone to come. It's a people's garden. And that's why when we started to open up again, we put down our ticket prices to 8 ringgit or 12 ringgit or something ridiculous like that, because it was a real commitment to say, look, you just come and just be outdoors, be outdoors again, get your hands dirty again, sweat again, feel the feet beneath your toes again, the ground beneath your toes. So yeah. And I think more and more I realized, and I was feeling like there was this calling in that, we believe in being in nature. I mean, which is why we do what we do at the gardens, and that's why we've never left, because we love the place. We love to be engaged with the outdoors, and I think it just that feeling just accelerated and multiplied within us to realize that life is found in nature. Really, I mean, it's not cheesy. It is reality. Our health, as we started going and pursuing natural health, we realized all our answers are found in nature, in what we eat and how we farm and how in our soil. And you can go deep diving into different elements of what nature has to offer, and it truly is the way back to
But that word you say, cheesy, right? I got to bring it up. Your place is totally not that. It shows. It's authentic. It's not cheesy. It's not some like tacky tourist, place.
It's not a tourist trap.
Yeah.
Where
It's not
tourist guys
trap.
get 40% commission.
Yeah. And you
Like
sell
South
merch, and you get the sense it's for real. It's peaceful. You get in touch with nature, and you guys did a good job on that.
Yeah.
But then also to kind of address what you mentioned, Mo. During the lockdown period, some people are cooped up in a cubicle. I really feel sorry for those in apartment space. And people need therapy. And when you're locked down in that space, what kind of therapy can you get?
Yeah.
At that period, online shopping just went like crazy. It went like crazy. It shot up, by how much? That's one form of therapy. It's retail therapy. But the telltale sign is, this is a sign where it shows people need to connect with another life form. The sale of plants just shot up like crazy.
Plants.
Yes. It shot up like crazy, and because of that, at that time, a lot of people were buying this indoor plants, the alocasia.
Oh, right.
Aroids. The price of the plant, normally you probably get it for like maybe a few hundred ringgit, and it went up to like thousands. So it's a form of retail therapy, and also it's people want to nurture and connect with something that lives. So that's why they were buying, plants like crazy. So they want that connection somehow. So, even if you don't consciously know that you want to connect with a plant or something that's alive, but subconsciously you just go there. So that's why the connection with nature, being outdoor, and being amongst plants is so important.
I'm sure the sale of pets also went up then.
I don't know whether they can ship pets or not.
Big events like the pandemic, like Week Wars, pandemic, all that, it brings up the phrase, you don't know what you have until you lost it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. My
And
God.
in a way, it make people realize, reflect their priorities and all that. But Mo, I think you're bringing in culture wars from America too much, all the generation labeling. It's not a generational thing. You see, in Penang too, I was stuck here for 6 months, and I noticed that even the older generation, everybody learned something new. There was a time where, there's more senior people like our parents' generation, your parents, my parents, they don't really use Zoom, they don't really use anything. But suddenly, because they had to, they keep on calling you. So you see, they always say, no, I don't know computer, cannot, too old. But suddenly, all of them are WhatsApping like crazy and Zooming.
Good morning messages.
And now they are even more obsessed with it.
Yeah.
That's actually true.
So it's not a generational thing. Everybody, a generation learns something in their own way from it. Like technology, you wouldn't imagine digital payments now.
Yes.
I heard the other day in a market, this senior person was telling the seller, how come you don't have touch and go? It's like, things have changed, man. Things have changed.
It used to be like, how come you don't have cash? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So it's not really a generational thing.
So you think it's an evolution of us as a society?
There are always snowflakes in every generation. Come on.
Yeah, but I mean, you talked about that as well. I can't quite remember how you phrased the question, but it was quite layered. But you were talking about mental health. You were talking about
connection with nature and the idea of the permanence of the story of society, like the structure of it.
Yeah.
No, for me, that's what made me lose my mind when I realized that everything is It's like the Matrix. Like I just took what is it? Was it the red pill or the blue pill that opens you up? Like what are those pills?
But that's the thing, But I mean, apart from but that whole narrative that we're pursuing is that whole return to that simple life in a way, right? And you look at, because if you look at where the global narrative going, it's all going the way of AI, etc. And I think, I mean, I don't know. But all I know, my gut feeling is that I feel like I want to move away from that whole.
Oh, yeah, I get exactly.
And so I'm really wrestling with this whole thing.
One of the interesting things called, the long view of things, and hopefully historians. I'm a researcher, but I know a lot about it, the history part. If you look across, not just within your lifetime, you see these trends repeat: industrial revolution, telecommunications, even internet. It's always about it's going to ruin our humanity. The thing is, we need to think long term. Ultimately, nothing much has changed. Like, for example, I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not threatened by AI at all, because what I do is I up my game. It makes us better because I'm going to do things that it can't do. I'm more humanized. Think about the future. People would want books that have the label human made.
Yeah.
Handcrafted. Even the word handcrafted. Why people buy handcrafted things when they can buy factory crafted things? It just different value propositions, that's all.
So you're saying that the moment AI comes in, rules
AI is just one of the very long revolutions.
We'll be trading with.
The fears are always the same. Even when the first steam engines are supposed to ruin work and people will be sloths. Okay, it's kind of true. We do look at screens all the time. But but the thing is, there's always fear because it's generational. You can't see the future. We are scared. But ultimately, the best, long-term thinking is to be as human as possible.
Well, do you think the fear comes from the realization that we're not living in our truest form? We're so disconnected from our ecosystem, right? Let's put it this way. When a bee is separated from the hive, what happens?
I would say
dies.
This is presentism again. Look at those mountains we have right in front now.
Yeah.
They used to be bald. Okay? The environmental awareness was not there. We tend to idealize the past. That's because humans were not around, but humans are around, and we cannot go back to that pristine state. But in a way, we are more enlightened because we understand these issues. Back then, they just chopped down trees, basically. It's just, there is no concept of, there's no understanding yet. It's not because they don't care. So it's to put a lens that the pristine world before that, you cannot return back then. But what we can is to manage it better.
True.
But you can't stop technology.
Yeah.
You just have to deal with it. Also, this is the part of the show we, want to know how you became, to where you are right now. And maybe we can start with Kenny. How did you get involved with the Spice Garden? Did you apply a job somewhere that came to you, and what is your background?
Like I said earlier before I got cut off, I studied in the US, my choice of subject was chemistry and biology. So when I after I graduated, I came back and I was plunged into the rat race. So I was working for a multinational. After 7 years, I said I had enough. I could feel really tired and energy was completely drained every day. So enough was enough. But then I started as a bike mechanic in a bicycle shop, apprentice bike mechanic. Then subsequently I opened my own shop, but that didn't last for too long. So then we had to close shop, and then I was kind of looking around for a job, and I found a tropical fruit farm.
Oh.
So at that time, I literally went to the office and say ask whether they had an opening, and I walked away really disappointed because the lady there said, no, sorry, currently we don't have any vacancy. But I kept persistent and I said, if it's okay if I have a word with the boss. And then lucky enough, she consented. She said, okay, you just wait. I'll see if the boss is free, then you can talk to the boss. And then that's when I met Mr. Chua, the owner of the tropical fruit farm. And I told him what I wanted to do, and then he asked me, "Oh, do you have any supervising or any management skills?" I said, "Yeah, I worked in the factory for like 7 years and had that culture in the factory." So okay, then I hire you as a farm manager.
Wow.
I was completely thrown off, almost fell off my chair.
Well, that's how you get a job.
From
Agriculture enterprise.
yeah, from I was kind of expecting, okay, you can be my gardener, and suddenly I was given the position of a farm manager. So I was thrown away. And then that's how it all began. My journey with plants.
And you came in fresh, right? You had no experience with plants or anything.
But the desire to learn, because it's always in me. I'm very outdoorsy kind of person.
I can tell you look fit.
Yeah, so
unlike us.
Speak for yourself. I'm kidding.
Come on, take your shirt off.
Not yet. Maybe in 6 months.
So that's how my journey got started. Learn from scratch, and I had to learn from this old uncle who's been a farmer for all his life. And he was a durian farmer, and he was. You guys know where the location of the tropical fruit farm is?
It's
kind of midway to Balik Pulau,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that uncle lives in Pantai Aceh. So every day, he would either get someone to send him from Pantai Aceh to fruit farm to work, and whenever he doesn't get sent, to and fro, sometimes he has no transport to go back. And you know what he does? He walks across the hill to get back home.
Wow.
So I think that's like a 5-kilometer walk through the jungle, in the trails and things like that.
Build your exercise into your work. Yeah.
So this guy at that time, he was in his 50s, I think. So very seasoned farmer. So I learned from him, and his name was Akai. Yeah.
Is he still there?
I think he's passed on. This is like, if he's still alive, he'll probably be in his 80s right now. So it was very humbling, this farm manager learning from the old timer, So kind of a romantic story also.
Yeah.
And you notice the team of every guest we had, right? Nobody ever does what they studied.
Oh, yeah. Did you do what you studied? I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
So then after that, did you apply to be with the Spice Garden, or they approach you?
Well, it's kind of easy that I was already dating him at that time. And it was
that kind of recruitment.
Well, that kind of recruitment. It seemed kind of obvious, right? Because we were left with suddenly me, like in my early 20s, I have to manage this garden
Of Eden.
This garden of Eden. Without a gardener. I'm like, okay, look, Kenny, you come and help.
But it was
And bonus, he looks good and fit, right?
it was good timing also, because I kind of thought, okay, it's enough that I learned about fruits, so maybe I'll move on and learn about something new. And then when I got to the Spice Garden, it was like poof! Oh my goodness, this is a completely different world of plants altogether. It's spices, it's herbs, it's wheat, it's trees, it's shrubs.
What's the difference between fruits and spices? I again, civilian, put seed, grow. That's what I see it as.
Well, it's. I mean, fruits are like, if you're looking at a tunnel vision, fruits are only like this big of a spectrum. And then you've got the rest of the floral world that's like about that
the
big.
diversity of spices, their species and shapes and requirements.
Yeah.
Because I guess also, correct me if I'm wrong, the fruit farm is done very much as a fruit orchard, and it's it's a fruiting tree, and then it's another fruiting tree, and Whereas the gardens is a forest, really, and we're growing things in and around the forest environment, so it's kind of maintaining that.
A fruit farm is very, very organized. You grow things in terraces and in lines and in rows and all that. Whereas the Spice Garden is really, really organic. It's like boom.
The fruit farm is a real farm, right? It's food production also.
Yeah.
So this one is a little bit
But
different.
wouldn't spice technically be food?
I don't think
Well,
the tropical
some of them.
No, we're not a
would be.
producing
you're not
garden.
a producer, not on commercial scale.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, commercial scale, you would level everything, put
Yeah,
fertilizer, whatever it
exactly.
takes to multiply it maximum.
Again, we're getting back to the whole romantic idea because for me, like the whole ecosystem sees like, oh, that's the circle of life, as opposed to like what you just said. Oh, if you're producing for food, you have to destroy the land, an ecosystem, and production line. You know.
Well, this is all modern day farming,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we're all actually very against. Actually, I mean, there's all issues there as
wasn't there
well.
a better way of doing it? I remember like there was a tribe that was discovered. The way they planted was it looked more like your backyard garden. They would plant at the edge of the forest or jungle ecosystem, and apparently that produced way more yield and healthier produce because you're not detaching from the ecosystem, you're adding onto it.
Yeah.
And to us it looks like, what is this sama? What is this rubbish, rubble, you know, but that's what it's supposed to be.
I mean, as you were saying earlier, you know, like this generation and everything, and you know, and connecting to the earth. I think there is a real momentum amongst certain communities all around the world who are really natural farming, syntropic farming. You know, so all that return to the earth and realizing that we are basically obliterating our soil.
Yeah,
right?
we
We
are.
are destroying it with all our modern day farming and all the issues that come with it. So there is a real revolution, I think, happening amongst the more awakened people. But you know, it's still
really
quite niche
small
and small.
pockets, yeah,
you know,
really small
so
pockets.
but it's about whether we can gather enough momentum. I spoke to someone last night who and you know, it's really interesting. We had a night event at the gardens last night, and this one lady was there, and she's come for a few of our night events, and so I finally got to chat with her. I said, "So what do you do? What's your day job?" And she's like, "I'm an astrologist." I'm like, "What?" You know, and so that she basically tells. She reads the zodiacs and all that, and she's spent 3 years just pursuing all this. And so I was like, so where are we now in the age of things? You know, I was just giving her these kind of high-level questions. She's like, yes, you know, the ancients would say we're going through an initiation period.
What?
And this initiation, you know, have you heard that whole thing where we're entering into the age of Aquarius and blah,
I've
blah,
heard.
blah, right? Yeah, so that she's into all of that. So anyways, the word she used was, we are moving into an initiation period, and the ancients say we may not make it. So it's really up to us. It's up to humanity whether we will cross the line and cross it well or we'll fail it. And so I asked her, what would it mean if we failed it? And she goes, your guess is as good as mine because we've never been there before. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I feel like, you know, this is what it is, right? Are there enough of these pockets of people returning to the earth and, you know, doing it right, you know, living wholesome, loving, spiritual lives? And are we going to cross the line together well and save humanity, or you know, or where are we going? So yeah, is there enough of us doing the right thing?
I hope we do, and I really do feel that there's some truth to that statement. You know, it's so weird because, and it's so weird that we're having this podcast for me to realize it while we're recording it, because that was the nagging feeling I've always had since COVID, because I was very much a different person pre-COVID, right? You see me now as the blonde hair crazy guy, you know, doing all these things. I wasn't. I was head of marketing and A&R. I was responsible for Dato Siti Nurhaliza's English album. I discovered Bunkface, Ochintaku, Kyoto Protocol. I created DFAM, and I developed the exact business strategy that Dola, right now, the girl group, I can even show you receipts. Like, I actually talked to my old friend who was my old colleague. He says, yeah, he cut and pasted my business plan for the girl group. Oh. I was, for all intents and purposes, Malaysia's #1 talent manager. Oh. I brought in acts like Metallica and everything into the Future Music Festival. 90% of the acts was booked through my company.
Right.
I was, for intents and purposes, I don't know if I can say this, but I'll say it, I was an asshole.
Okay.
I was a horrible human being.
Oh.
So I think for me, I have to explain that, because people now, they know me through Penang Hidden Gems, and they're like, oh, Mo, you just lost your mind and stuff like that. It's like, you have no idea the transition I went. Right. And I think through this podcast, I realized I might agree with that. I think we're in the point of transition.
Yeah.
Because I was horrible.
Yeah.
I've ruined so many people's lives and careers and formed so many. I'm not proud because I brought into Malaysia the concept of the 360 deal. The 360 deal is basically you're an artist, you're a slave to the label.
Okay.
I brought that in.
All right, we're
right.
almost out of time.
The cabal is listening!
Yes. Okay. So, Kenny, now we know how you got involved. Did the Wilkinsons approach you, Katharine, or did you apply for the job?
Actually, it was through Freddie. Yeah. So,
Freddie.
Yeah, because Freddie Walker, he was the manager at that time. So I guess he had gone around looking for people.
Oh, so you
to
were
join the
second,
team.
is it?
Yeah, he was set up as the manager. He was so he was part of that team that David had assembled. And at that time, I was working at the Friends at the Penang Botanic Garden Society.
Oh, really?
Well, you
Yeah.
didn't ask Freddie how he found you?
Oh, what? Through you?
Through me.
A reveal. Oh.
Oh, so yeah. So anyway.
So who set up who to date who?
Well, exactly. It's like, so yeah. So that's where I was after having graduated, come back from England, and I was doing all these disparate things. I was with Arts Ed, Anak Nakota. I was I was facilitating some children's research arts groups, and I was helping out with the Penang YTL Arts Festival at that time. Just doing all these small things, and then suddenly I was at the Botanic Garden Society, and Freddie said, "You come along, have a look at what we're doing at the garden." So I went, and I was like, "Sure, yeah, it looks great. I love it, you know." And so I went in, and I was like the second staff in, and then 2 years later, I'm like the manager. I'm like, what am I doing? And it 21 years later, I'm still there, and playing a different role, but yet not, you know, so.
So Kenny is in the sciences, and what was your background?
Oh, I was social sciences. So sociology and education. That was mine. So kind of using my degree a little bit, you know. I mean, because I was kind of developing all the education syllabus, and I still am doing that. So
Educating society. Yeah.
Well, in a way, but
Okay, this is the part of the show where we let the guests. You have any shout outs, you want to announce
You can say anything you want. If it was me, I'll be rambling on against the cabal and the Illuminati.
Okay, besides that, anything about the tropical spice garden that we should know about, you want to share? There's also a book about the garden, right?
Yeah, Roz wrote that, my sister. Yeah, that we launched that for our 10th anniversary.
So you see, there's also a bit of cronyism going on here.
Rosalie Chua, Clarity Publishing, former editor.
Oh, yeah. God, what is it that you don't know, Eugene? But,
Well, my job is basically to find out Penang, so I would be doing a terrible job if I don't know.
Oh, trust me, he's very informed. I'm quite scared of him sometimes.
Yeah.
I also do
bet,
private
I bet.
investigation. I just kidding.
No, actually, if you said so, I would believe it. Half the stuff you knew about me, I'm like, how did you know?
Maybe we just squeeze in one more topic before you do the announcements. It's like, currently your, is it the merchandise you're selling in what do you call that area where you sell stuff?
Gift shop?
Gift shop? You mentioned earlier, Kenny, it was a rest R&R, right, for the British? Is that the...
Yeah, no, that's the old
That's the
villa.
first one.
old villa.
The old building.
So are there two
original
of
building.
them, the crack villa and the low...
No, that's the crack villa. Yeah.
So I want to share with you something interesting because a researcher in Australia, she's buried into the family that own Lone Pine. So actually there are a quartet of it belonging to the same owner, and yours is one of it. So they had this pair here called Lone Villa, Lone Crack, Lone Lodge, and Lone Pine. So this guy who owned it was really lonely.
You're telling me.
So I guess there were actually two on your property from the old maps, which is the Lone Villa and Lone Crack, but somehow it has now merged into
Right.
Okay, well, there's another part of the story that I think maybe it could be interesting. So Lone Crack is right up the hill, and from what I heard, Lone Villa possibly is by the beach. Unfortunately, that building got destroyed.
I see.
Yeah, so the whole plot, the whole parcel of Spice Garden land actually is before the road, up to the hill slope with that bungalow there, the Lone Craig Villa. And then there's also part of the property that sits on the beach. But I mean, this is hearsay. I don't know how true this is. Well, the property used to belong to two families, two prominent Penang families owned the property, Loh and Chung. So somehow or rather, one of the family was supposed to manage the property, but they didn't pay the quick rent for the property, and that part of the land got taken back by the government, and that villa apparently was sitting there, but eventually got destroyed out of neglect. Yeah, so that could be Lone Villa.
Yeah, which is where all the gerai and the stalls are now. Yeah.
I'm researching, for my book, which is about the north coast of Penang. So another researcher about Lone Pine, and we're getting close to the truth. There's some truth in what you say. There's a good hint.
Is it still there?
No, it's gone.
It's gone.
Like completely, like no trace at all.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
So when you launch a book, please sell it in the gift shop.
Oh, I love your gift shop. I found
that's
some interesting books in there.
You know what we should do? We should arrange with his recording studio. We can do a live podcast there. I mean, sorry, not live. Another podcast there when you launch this book. Like, it would be nice. In the forest, in your element.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
I last year I went with my kids. I remembered going to the restaurant many years ago, but we went there. It's no longer there. What happened to it?
Yeah, so that didn't make it through COVID.
Oh, I see.
And that was managed separately by by another outfit.
What was the name of?
The Tree Monkey.
Oh, the Tree Monkey. Yes.
So unfortunately, that's just left to neglect.
Is there now
right
still
now.
a cafe or something?
No.
So there are no F&Bs anymore.
Well, we do have a little cafe coffee pit stop. It's now beside the road near our entrance.
I see.
So Canopy Coffee, it runs and it's cute little. It kind of sits within our garden quarters and our nursery.
I really like
so
your gift shop. It's so interesting.
Yeah, the gift shop's fun. I do enjoy the gift shop because, as you say, I try not to make it too merchandise orientated, but things that people will really feel like they will take home and use and value, and and I like to develop interesting range of what I consider true Malaysian souvenirs, where so now, for example, I'm working on developing a whole range of games, like board games, like Malaysian designed and Malaysian produced by Malaysian game board
Is it ready?
designers. Yeah, no, there's actually a whole host of them, and we just co-publish
available at your
our own
shop?
game.
Is there more?
Yeah.
I love Bansan's like hard, like but
Is it available at your at the shop at the Spice
Bansan's
Garden?
available, and
Gokaki.
so actually the Spice Gardens and Luma, which produced Bansan, have co-published
our
a
previous
little
guest was
card
talking about that game.
Tropika.
Oh my
Kettle
God.
Potters, yeah. So we're excited about that. We're going to be launching it. We've already started to distribute
I
it.
didn't
but-
Is anything else
Yeah.
that you would like to share with the audience before we end the show right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, firstly, I think it's to say, because I missed this out the first session, was just to say really a sincere thank you to the community, because really without the community we wouldn't be here, and I will continue to remember that in everything we do. And so just watch our space for how things are evolving, because I really feel like we're only just beginning. Actually, I feel like COVID actually has given us a fresh start, and like we did a very successful wellness festival in June, and I think that will be the beginnings of many more to come. So look out for our wellness festivals. Look out for the space as being a gathering space of communities, and it's very wide. So we have the cycling communities, we have families, we have children in nature, we have world schooling families. We've got the whole wellness community, and people are really beginning to see us as a place to heal. So I think these are all some of the things that we're very excited about, and I feel like we're just on the brink of so much more to come. So we're really excited about the possibilities that are opening up, and I feel as I'm stepping away from that very fast-paced AI world. I'm even thinking like I even want to drop the cashlessness. I want to go cash, man. Cash is king. I want to have that. I feel so strongly about moving back away from that, and making a stand for that. But I know it would be pretty insane. But anyway, it's exciting times, so we'll see what happens. So, don't know whether you want to say anything, Kenny?
I think you've said it pretty much all. I only want to add that, people of Penang, Malaysians, you are always in our minds and in our hearts. So yeah, we are utterly and totally will be always be grateful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. This would have to be one of, I don't know, you guys inspire me, and thank you for coming on and listening to our rambles and being part of this project and, laying down the inner thoughts and everything that runs through you and your business and your endeavors. And I really hope that we make it out of this transition.
So do I.
See you guys.
This has been another episode of People of Penang.
Oh my God.
Thank you.